Right, hello and welcome guys. And this quick tutorial video, I'll be showing you how to use SQLmap, which is a tool that you can use to exploit SQL injection vulnerabilities on web applications. So if you recall, in our last video of the scanning for web objects, we used a tool called DERB, one of the tools where we identified some web objects on our Linux Kong virtual machine. So I got my Kali on my lab Linux Kong virtual machine, and if I just run this again, we identified a specific website that was used, or car website. So I can just cancel this, which is the /cars directory. Okay, so this is the website that is vulnerable to a specific SQL injection vulnerability. SQL injection vulnerabilities are quite easy to test because when you're making queries to a specific website, or a website is making queries to a database, you can test those specific queries for SQL injection. So you can check the parameters to see if they are vulnerable. So let's say, for instance, we want to view one of these cars. We can see straight away that the URL points to a parameter car ID equals 11. So that tells us that this specific car, this Fiat C model, is listed on the specific database as the item 11 in the table. So if we go back and we try clicking on a different car, you can see this points to item 9. So typically this is how a database works with a web application making queries and selecting specific items from a relational database. So let's see if we then put something that is not a number, and then we attempt to run this query or send this request, we can see SQL errors, and this just tells us basically that an SQL vulnerability is likely in this car ID parameter. Also, this specific web application is built using a CMS called the car project. So if we do something like exploit database, we can search for car project. Okay, and you can see car project, I believe is this one, is vulnerable to an SQL injection. If we read about this, we'll find out that the parameter, like I mentioned, the car ID parameter, which is the same one we had here when we viewed the specific cars, is a parameter that is vulnerable to an SQL injection. So if we can send crafted queries, you can see the vulnerability allows an attacker to inject SQL commands. So we're going to take advantage of this, and we're going to use a tool called SQLmap to automate the process of exploiting SQL injection. So SQLmap should be installed on your Kali installation, and if we do a -H, I believe, we can see the flags on how to use it. So at least you have a URL -URL to the site, and also where the vulnerability is. So -U point it to the website, and then we can use different flags for injection, force the backend DBMS to provide value for the DBMS. We can enumerate tables, password, current database, current user. We can also dump the database table or entries within the database, dump all the DBMS database table entries. So there are a lot of flags that we can use, and in some scenarios you might be able to get a shell by using certain flags. So let's try this out. So I'm going to do SQLmap -U, and I'm going to provide a URL that is vulnerable to the SQL injection. Paste this here, and I'll do a -- I think it's DBMS, right? And SQLmap saying DBMS, DBS, and we're going to say yes to that. I think the best query to use, let's go back, it's been a while. So we want to enumerate for the database that is actually used by this web application. Let's just use the flag batch so that it doesn't prompt us for the yes and no questions. So we run this straight away, and we can see it confirms that the ID, the car ID parameter, is actually the one that is vulnerable. You can see it says here that it's injectable, and it's performing different queries, blind SQL injection queries on that specific parameter. So the car ID appears to be Boolean based blind and is injectable. So we're going to give SQLmap some time to finish running those queries, and it should give us the name of the database being used by these web application. So now we can see that we've got, it tells us that the backend DBMS is MySQL, so MySQL is the backend, and it's got two available databases. One is the information schema and one is car project. So and we know that the name of this web application is car project, so we can guess car project is the database. So let us run our command again. Now that we know the name of the database, -d for database, car project is the name of the database. We can query the tables. So what tables do we have within this specific database? So we use the tables flag, the batch command again, and we simply just do enter, and it comes back to say there are 17 tables in this specific car project database. So we can see manufacturer's company name. I think the one that we might be interested in should be the motor login. This might contain maybe credentials. So let's have a look at that table. And then we use the -t flag. So -t flag, and it's motor underscore, I believe, login. And again, we do the -- batch. We want to know how many columns are in this specific table. So in a table, in a database, you have tables, and within table you have columns within that specific database. We run this command, and it tells us there are 8 columns in the database table motor login, and here we can see name, last login, ID, motor admin super, passcode, login status. So what I can do is to just dump this entire database by using the dump command, and I can still run my batch. Let's see if we can dump the entire table and see the contents. So straight away it's brute forcing, and it's found some passwords, Aston Martin. And if we have a closer look, it's found 2 entries. We have a username James and what appears to be an MD5 hash and the password. So it's cracked the password. So you can see here it tells us it's using an MD5 hash function, and the crack the password has to match in for this hash, and supercars for the hash as well. So the database is not only vulnerable to SQL injection, but is also saving usernames or passwords in MD5 hash format. So MySQL is also able to crack those passwords. So we have two users, James and superadmin. If you go back to our directory brute forcing, we'll find out that the cars, if you do a recursive brute force on this directory, I think that the car has got an admin page, I believe, and we can then use this password. So if you do a directory search or directory brute force, you should find out that the cars or a recursive directory brute force, you'll find out that it's an admin page that we can log into. So with those credentials, we can attempt to probably log in. So let's go back to here. Let's log in with the super admin, because I believe maybe that's the admin account. So super admin and the password is supercars. So username, paste, and the password supercars. Copy that, paste, sign in, and straight away we can see that we have hi super admin. We have access to the administrator's console for the specific web application. We can see these are the users. James is also a user, but he's not an admin user, but super admin is the user, is the admin account. We can have a look at the stock, and here we can see all of the items, the cars and their images uploaded to that specific web application. So from an SQL injection, we've managed to be able to dump the credentials that are stored in the database. SQLmap able to crack the password because they're using some sort of MD5 hash, and then armed with those credentials, we're able to take control, take over this specific web application. So basic SQL injection, how you can test for it, how you can use tools like SQLmap to find and to exploit SQL injection vulnerabilities. Hope you found that interesting, and I shall catch up with you some other time. Take care.